You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners and viewers, to What's the T-Bev, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN. I'm your host, Christos Generis. What's the T-Bev is a weekly podcast where I interview members of the LGBTQIA plus community and allies. We get to know our guests' trekdom and then discuss current Trek news. And of course, my favorite is speculation. Remember, you can watch What's the T-Bev on our YouTube channel of the same name or wherever you get your BQN podcast. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode with Trek Culture's Sean Ferrick. It really got a lot of views and downloads. I'd like to share some of the feedback from our viewers. On YouTube, Matt Harker says, it was such a great episode. The rapport that you two have as friends shows through loud and clear. What's the T-Bev is a great way for a new fan of the community to dive a little deeper and get to know a little bit more about the LGBTQIA plus Trek side of fandom. Thanks, Matt. Interestingly, I've only known Sean for a couple of months, as you know, from the last episode. So the fact that we seem to have that rapport is just, I guess, some natural good chemistry. So that's awesome. William DeLong says, yes, he does remember Micro Machines and the gold-colored collectibles Enterprise D. My first contact, he saw Star Trek, the motion picture, in the theater when he was 4. So that's a pretty cool first contact. I know I was a little too young to see that in theaters when I was younger. All right, I'd like to introduce you to this week's guest, a really good friend of mine who I've known for several years now, Mr. Jason Anderson. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Hey, Christos, I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. I am obviously honored to be on your podcast, and I've been waiting for my turn, so I'm glad it's finally here.
Yeah, episode 8, that's pretty early on in the grand scheme of things.
100%. I am very happy to be here.
Yeah, so listeners, I really mean it when I say I've known Jason at least a long time, and as far as my trekdom, fandom, con going antics have been. I met Jason in 2017 on my 40th birthday, attending my first ever STLV, and my friend Joe and I were there together, and Jason was the first person I met walking around that day.
Yeah, I actually think I remember I think we met in there's like an art show sometimes. I think you guys were in the art show and I was coming in. What's really funny is I remember meeting you, but you are not the first person. I think it just shows how social I am. But Mark White, who I think you've also either had on the podcast, I know you guys do podcasts together, also has said that I was the first person that he met at a Star Trek convention too. So it just, to me, I'm very happy that that's the case for people because it, one, speaks to how social I am, but two, I'm always happy to welcome people into the club.
Well, given that this is an LGBTQIA podcast, should I tell you how we really met? Sort of.
How do we really meet? Sort of.
We were chatting on Grindr and we literally bumped into each other.
Were we? Oh, I don't remember that. I remember. I do. Remember that. I mean, it's 100% possible. I'm not saying that I don't remember it like it's not true, but
or Scruff or whatever, one of those. But it was like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And then there you were. It was kind of like one of those things.
Yeah, it shows how much I pay attention to that because I probably didn't even, register or something. But I do remember walking into the museum art show.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really fun.
With a TNG exhibit because it was the 30th anniversary, I think, or something like that. So Yeah, with a TNG exhibit, and you were like kind of like right there, and you're like, anyways. So yeah, you're with the first of my many, 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 many Trek friends that I have made through the years.
Well, that is an honor that I will gladly accept.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about you, Jason? I see some really cool pictures of you with some awesome Trek celebrities here.
Yes. Well, I think the biggest thing to say about me is yes, every single year, my favorite month or week, I guess, of the entire year that I've looked forward to. And in doing research for this podcast, I've always been kind of fuzzy on when. I believe my first Star Trek Las Vegas, which is the week that I'm telling you I look forward to all year. I believe the first one was 2007, which means that 2022 was my 15th, because you don't really talk about 2020, right? But so there wasn't one. But I believe 2022 was my 15th Star Trek Las Vegas in a row. And so, yes, as people watching the podcast can see, well, you can see at least three of. I have a kind of quasi obsession with collecting photo ops and autographs. So I think that one. Okay, so the one there with Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker. That's my very first convention, I think 2007, because I did a little bit of research, like I said, getting ready for this, tried to look up the like programs back when Star Trek Las Vegas was at the Hilton, which is now not called the Las Vegas Hilton, but
it's the Westgate.
Westgate, yeah. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. I've been going to Star Trek conventions, well, Star Trek Las Vegas for 15 years. I actually went to my first Star Trek convention when I was in high school, which this just shows you how long ago. I should have looked that up, actually, but in Denver, which is where I lived, I didn't live there at the time, but in Denver, they used to have 2 a year, which was great. But this one had Sir Patrick Stewart, Marina Sirtis, Jonathan Del Arco, who's Hugh. And it also had a surprise guest, which was Tom Cruise. And just to show you like how, like, I don't think Tom Cruise probably ever does conventions anymore, but this was another time, and maybe shows my age because I was in high school when he was promoting Interview with the Vampire, and he just dropped in. No one knew he was going to be there. He was just trying to drum up, I think, publicity for the movie, and everyone just went crazy. Everyone screamed.
Oh, right.
But anyway, so that was my first convention. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. It's just literally Star Trek is life. It's such an important part of my life. Yes. And I'm just so happy that I found it, I guess.
Oh, yeah, me too. It's funny. I think that's the common thread for a lot of us is that, it's more than just a sci-fi show. It's a fandom. It's its own universe, and through the cons and the cruises and all that stuff, it's a way for like-minded people to come together. I love going to STLV. I love going for the celebrities and all the the vendors and all that stuff. But really, my favorite thing about going to STLV has become the people, seeing all my friends.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, like I said, I have that photo op and autograph like internal challenge or collect them all like Pokemon or whatever. But I could. It is really interesting, I think. You're right. It almost becomes secondary, going to the panels and going to, and it's all great. And I have friends that still do it every year. I have friends that don't ever do it because but it really has transitioned for us, I think, especially going as long. I always tell the joke, and I love Marina Sirtis, which we'll probably cover, later. But I always make a joke that I've heard her tell the same TNG stories and movie stories. I always say I can probably tell them maybe a little bit more, a little better than she can at this point because I've heard them so many times. So it really does become more about your friends, more about your, Trek family than just friends, or than the
Definitely.
stars. Yeah.
Exactly. And for those of you who are listening, there's some cool pictures of me and Jason through the years. All right, we're going to transition to my favorite part of the show, which we've now kind of dubbed Trekking to Know You. This is where I feel like I know my friends, but when we start asking these questions, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't know that. So we're going to get to know your trekdom. So question 1, what was your first contact with Star Trek?
Oh, so this is a good question. And I have to believe I was in 6th or 7th grade when I found Star Trek. And I've loved listening to your other podcasts. And I'm kind of jealous, frankly, of those of you who've had like family members like your fathers or your mothers like introduce you. I stumbled upon Star Trek completely organically, like on my own. And I think I used to come home from school, and it was obviously The Next Generation was in syndication. And I think every day after school, I would like come home, like get that post school snack, cereal or whatever, healthy snack I'm sure that we had. But, and just sit down, and I want to say it was at least 2 episodes. It might have been 1, but every day I would like run home, like as soon as I discovered Star Trek, and just like that was like amazing. That was the best thing of my day, was coming home and just watching The Next Generation after school. So I'd have to say that was and that was when we lived in Denver. So I wound up moving away from Denver, but still in Colorado, after my 7th grade year. So I remember, I was still in Denver, so it had to have been 6th or 7th grade when I found out. So it was still on. The Next Generation was, but I was watching reruns. So,
but it was far enough along that it was airing an episode of the day. Yeah, I remember when I was in high school, it was on from 6 to 7 p.m. every day. So I would catch a rerun, and then on Saturday nights was when the first run new episodes would air. So I was the same way. And I've told this before. Early on, I think after the first season had completed, one station in Ohio was airing them daily, which was weird because at 4:00, which is weird because they only had about 5 weeks of material because it would cycle back around. But I tell you, TNG got ingrained in me young because of that. So
that's so funny. And I actually learned that about you in one of your podcasts, earlier podcasts. I didn't know that you grew up in Ohio, and I'm sorry about that, but I did not know that. I knew you used to live in Hawaii. I know you lived in California. I did not know that you grew up in Ohio. So
yeah, I always say Ohio is a great place to be from.
Yeah, that's what
I think. I feel like it gave me a good background of morals and for the most part. But yeah, when I was 18, I literally go to college in Ohio or go to college in Hawaii. That decision was pretty easy.
We'll probably you'll probably get letters about that. So sorry in advance for bashing
Ohio Trekkies. We love you.
Yeah, sorry. And I feel sorry for you. No, I'm kidding. That's my heart goes out to you.
Yes, exactly. Empathy. Come on, Deanna. Well, what is your favorite Star Trek series?
Well, and this is funny because I think when you go to conventions and you meet new people who've fallen in love with Trek at different times, I think it seems to me that always the Star Trek that how you were introduced is your favorite. Isn't that weird? Like older people, I think, they were introduced to the original series and they loved the original series, by and large, not everybody, but for me, it was definitely Next Generation, and it still is. I will say, and that is how I, like I said, that's how I was introduced to Star Trek. But I'll say, like, lately, Lower Decks coming in hot. Like, I love Lower Decks. I think it's fantastic. I think you've talked about it before, but like, you can watch an episode and then you have to go back and watch it a couple of times just to try to pick up on all the Easter eggs and things they throw in there. So, but Next Generation's where it's at. It's always been my Trek. So.
Yeah, I hear you. I watch a Lower Decks episode and then I go watch Trek Culture so I can be told all the things I missed and it's usually a lot.
Yeah. No, I know.
Which is like the genius of it, though. It's the genius of it.
And there's so many, like little things they throw in, whether it be like the name of a restaurant or just this species is in the background that you didn't even see maybe, during the show, but that you haven't seen since an early Deep Space Nine episode or something, I love that about the show. But
so what is your favorite Trek episode? And I guess I would assume it's from TNG, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's funny. There are episodes that I can single out as like really good Star Trek episodes that are not in TNG, obviously. And just to be clear, I really like Discovery. I really like, I like Strange New Worlds, obviously, is on fire right now. But I would have to say, and I just did this, I was asked this recently on Instagram, and it's changed, I think, over time, but I would say season 4, episode 21, which is the Drumhead. It's the one with the overzealous Admiral, Nora Sati, who's just kind of like, I love her like strength and everything, but like there's this poor, medical technician, Simon Tarsis is the name of the character in the show or in the episode. And I just like it, I think it honestly formed I do stuff with law, like my work is in law. And I think it really formed it might be an overstatement to say life, but like certainly my interests in what, I did later in life. I just think it's such a great example of how careful you have to be with the power that you have, and or people that earn power have to have, and be careful with it. Because it can be corrupted, what is it, the Spider-Man saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something like that. I think that's Spider-Man. No. Anyway, I just think it's a fantastic episode, and it's like complex. And when I first saw it, I remember thinking, no way, they're going after Picard now. Like, what? I don't know. I love that episode.
It's definitely one of those episodes that comes up in the top 10, top 15 TNG episodes. I love it. I think Jane Simmons is the actress that plays the Admiral, and I think even just the caliber of actress that she is, like, she delivers. Her diction, her presence is so strong. Part of what makes that episode works is having a huge figure like that could get the Worfs of the Enterprise to come along, right? And go along, because you have to for that episode to be believable, you have to have that kind of gravitas to you, I think, for it to like really land.
Right. And I think that speaks to another dynamic within the episode that I really love, because like Worf is like the epitome of straight and narrow, right? Like he only went along with her because he thought it was the right thing. Like he believed in what she was saying and what she was doing. Now, obviously his relationship with Picard wound up influencing, towards the end when he's like, whoa, hold on. Like, this is maybe gone a little too far. But I think that's just part of the brilliance of that episode, is that, it shows how easy people can be misled when people jump to conclusions and are not, appropriate with the way that they do things. And I think Spencer Garrett, I met him at a Star Trek Las Vegas, who plays Simon Tarsis in the episode. And I met him and just like also told him, like, dude, I love your episode so much. I think it set me on my path, like it's just so great. And he was really gracious, really nice guy. So anyway, that's one of the other cool things about going to so many conventions is you just meet all these people. And I know you've talked about that, recently with the cruise, and how the cruise is even like a different relationship or experience with them. But I just love it.
What is your favorite movie? And I preface, all 13 movies are in play, including the Kelvin universe.
Right. Well, I'm not going to pick a Kelvin universe one, but I do think, probably is no surprise. I picked a TNG movie, which First Contact, I just think is a fantastic episode or fantastic movie. But I would say, I like all of the movies. And I think even, a lot of the original series movies are great. I used to I was thinking about this, about what my favorite movie might be. And even the motion picture, which I used to think was kind of slow, I now find fascinating. I think it's just getting older, and appreciating it more, but love it. I love all of them. But if I had to pick, I'd probably say First Contact.
Yeah. Funny you say that about the motion picture. I probably watched it more in the last year than I ever have before, especially now that we have the remastered 4K director's cut. Like that's just like, oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, First Contact is not a bad pick. I literally just got the this big coffee table book for the making of First Contact, and I'm like, I've already done the first pass where I looked at all the pictures. Now I need to kind of like dig into reading it, but I'm like really looking forward to that. It's such a good movie.
Well, I know we're probably going to, I think, talk about books more, but if you listened to or read the novelization of the motion picture, because it is dark. Like, I mean, I strongly suggest it. I'm learning things. I think I'm listening to it again. I don't know if I've listened to it previously right now on Audible, but it's really like backstory about like who the people are and what they've been doing and like some of the relationships, and it's really fascinating. So
yeah, I own a copy that apparently was in the Roddenberry library at their house somehow through STLV. But it's just the same paperback that we all have. But I have not read it yet, but I also hear like how like it was written by Gene Roddenberry himself.
Yep.
And I hear it's like overtly like sexist at times, and it's or at least it's the reputation it has.
Yeah, I wouldn't. There's some interesting. They do these like editor's notes, I guess, where in the book, it's whoever is writing the book speaks to the characters who are being discussed. So like at certain points, they talk about this idea. I actually believe this is, I'm remembering this correctly, but they ask Captain James Kirk, about if he was aware that people thought that like he and Spock had more than a professional relationship. Like they talk about this in the book, and he's like, I wasn't aware that people thought this. I can tell you we didn't, but like whatever. Like it wasn't done in a bad taste, I would say. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, I might give it a shot. I own it, so
you should. Yeah, you should.
All right. Who is your favorite Star Trek character?
Well, probably leading up, I kind of hinted at it earlier, but I'd have to go Counselor Deanna Troi. Just again, gravitated early to her as a character. I just think she's Commander Counselor Deanna Troi. I wanted to make sure and say, that she has that rank, which I found awesome as well, because I just think she's a complex character, and I think they could have, obviously it would have been great if they did a little bit more with her, but I think especially towards the end, in season 7, they really were, trying to develop her as an important part of the crew, which I liked to see. And I don't know, just love her, always have. I know she's, again, I've seen Marina Sirtis enough and spoken with her enough to know she's very different from Counselor Troi, but like the character of Deanna Troi is just a role model for me. So
yeah. No, I love Troi. I feel like Troi and Crusher fans are kind of in the same boat with the arc of characters having been done wrong, and then I think with like the help of people like Jerry Taylor, they started getting some redemption during the final 2 or 3 seasons of TNG. And then they got done wrong again in the movies.
Yeah. No, 100%.
And-
It drives me crazy whenever everybody talks about, Counselor Troy not being able to. So the ship was already failing. Like, just to be clear, I always like to. Anyway, this is a fight that I know.
We just watched it. I was at my brother's house for Thanksgiving last week, and we watched Generations. And you're like, it literally gets hit by a shockwave, and then everything doesn't work.
Right. And she's held responsible anyway.
Well, it's just, but yeah, people love to make their jokes. But yes, I know. I have to put up with Sub Rosa jokes. Don't worry.
I know. You do. You do.
Yeah. So I get it. Everyone's got their. I said this on a couple episodes ago, and I threw the topic to Galaxy Class here on BQN. I said, you guys need to do an episode where you take the other 6 leads from TNG and let's hear what their Sub Rosa is, and let's talk about those.
Right? No, I think that's fascinating. Yeah,
yeah.
That's a great.
But it's not a positive topic though, so I think that's the hesitation over there at Galaxy Class. It's not.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some of the positive sides of Trek, not the stinkers.
Yeah.
All right. Because of the way you answered that question, and I don't think anybody has answered it with a captain, so I get to ask you who your favorite captain is. Because your favorite character is not a captain.
Yeah. Well, I hate to ruin everybody's surprise, but it's going to be the one that you think. But, so obviously there's a theme is what I'm trying to say. But I would say Jean-Luc Picard is my favorite captain. But I would say honorable mentions to Janeway and New Pike, because I think he's fantastic. I think you've talked about that, about him as a character previously on the podcast as well. And, but yeah, I mean, Janeway is a very close second, I'd say. But I really do think that Picard is the epitome of great leadership. And speaking of Galaxy Class, at Galaxy Class, I was a guest with Amy and Joe on an episode of Galaxy Class. And, what we were supposed to do, and this just goes to show like why Picard is my favorite captain. We were supposed to find issues that we took with like decisions that Picard made and then like argue against them, or for them or against them, depending on, the topic. And it was very difficult because he's just such a great character and a great leader, and like that's how he's written, so I mean, one that I was proud of is obviously he went a little to Moby Dick in First Contact, a little too aggressive there, which is obviously the movie, but or the point of the movie, but that he was obviously traumatized by the Borg in a lot of different ways. But honestly, like that was like the one decision or time when I could pick Picard was not being great. So that's difficult.
Yeah, we literally this morning recorded a new episode of All Good Things, and it's the theme is Captain or the host's favorite. So I got to pick my favorite episode, and we dissected it. And so my favorite episode is The Chase from TNG, and we spent a lot of time, listeners, a little preview here, talking about the ready room scene between Troy and Picard in that episode, where she's basically trying to console him through his grief of Professor Galen dying, and then also talking to him about the fact that hey, you've basically ignored our orders and we're starting this wild goose chase, and we're supposed to be at this conference, which is 6 months in the planning. And Picard just kind of goes off on her and gives her this big dressing down and sends her out the door. And she was 100% right. So, not, arguably, I guess the means justify the end, because in the end, of course, yes, they end up making that big discovery, but
never to be mentioned again, right? But
we talked about that too.
Yeah. Good
but,
episode. I didn't know that was your favorite episode. That's interesting.
It's a fun episode. It's got a lot to it. So yeah, listeners, if you want to hear more about The Chase, All Good Things is out later this week. Should be dropping Thursday, December 1st, I believe. And this will probably drop tomorrow, whatever day this is. I've lost track of them. Okay, so Captain Picard's the fave. I love that. We could also just take that Drumhead episode and take everything she was trying to throw at him as bad decisions. Because she was turning some of his biggest decisions around on him. So.
Right. And saying that they were violations of Federation law and the Prime Directive. Yeah.
Well, let's ask this next question. So, wonder if we're going to just keep following the theme here. But what is your favorite starship?
I wanted to not follow the theme, but I am a big fan of the D. Anyway, obviously, joke, haha. But also E. I really liked the E, but weirdly, my second choice after Enterprise would be, I'm very fond and just weirdly always have been of the Miranda class vessels, which I think the most notable one is the USS Reliant was
the first one we saw.
Yeah, and I think so. you used to be able to get these little like pewter. They were like just a couple inches, maybe, of like replicas, and there was crew, but they also, I used to have a Miranda class, and I'm sure it was the Reliant, but I don't know. And I used to take it everywhere as a kid. Like I literally, it would be like the thing that my Counselor Troy pewter little figure and the Miranda class would travel with me, like when I go to visit my dad, like when I go on trips, like everywhere. It was like my security blanket. So I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for the Miranda class, but I'd go Enterprise D,
All right. And that is a excellent choice. And yeah, I love the D as well.
Yeah.
But my favorite is the A, the refit Enterprise, but the Enterprise D is like literally like neck and neck with that, only because I think, like you said, kind of what we grew up on. That, but it's funny, like how my taste in starships have evolved too. I remember when Voyager came out on screen, I was disappointed with the look of Voyager when it first, and now I love it. Like, I guess they kind of grow on you.
Yeah, they do.
I really kind of hated how they were getting away from the saucer and things like that. Which, ironically, I'm like, I really want to meet Terry Matalas and talk to him, because everything he's doing with Picard season 3 are like things that go through my head too. Like, I'd love to see these, starships kind of get back to a more traditional look, and things like that. And it's exactly the way he's taking things in season 3 of Picard. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later.
Great.
But yeah. The Titan A. I am so all about. All right. Well, let's maybe get to another more philosophical type question. What does Star Trek mean to you?
Yeah. You sent me this question before, and I have been trying to just articulate, like, just think of the words that can articulate what it means to me. And I think we've talked about, like how important the conventions are, and how, and I know that in prior podcasts, you've had guests describe it very, very eloquently, but I every time I think about Star Trek, and for listeners or for viewers that are watching on YouTube, there's a bunch of, Star Trek is just, it is a philosophy. For a lot of us, it is like a lifestyle. It is where I have met some of my best friends in life. And I just cannot say, there is something unique about Star Trek. And I think it's the idealization of the idealized vision of the future. I think it is a common purpose or viewpoint. And just, you can see most of these people I've met at conventions, who are my closest Star Trek friends. The one I'm very lucky, because my best friend in the whole world, Matt, who's with Kelsey Grammer and I in one of these photos, also in a really good episode. That's Cause and Effect, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah, great episode.
It's a great
Anyway,
one. Great episode.
But my best friend Matt is a huge Star Trek fan, so I didn't meet him at conventions. But a lot of people, so many people in my life, I just cannot say enough about how lucky I feel to have found them. And I wouldn't have found them without Star Trek. You know, I think it makes you, when you find it, whether it be however you find Star Trek, I think it puts you on a track, you know, that you develop in a way that is really fascinating, because even though we all developed separately, and you were in Ohio and I was in Colorado, and people are in Australia and the UK and Vegas and like everywhere, you know, but we all develop on this similar track, even though we're nowhere near each other. And it's because of this philosophy and this lifestyle and this way of viewing the world that we've all kind of grown up together, but separate. I don't know if that's if that resonates, but I just love it. I can't imagine my life without it. It's just, someone recently said it was home, or it was family. And yes, all of the above, above.
I hear you. It's funny, before I even discovered the conventions, well, I mean, I went to conventions really young, but before I came to STLV as a 40-year-old adult, the closest I came to that was my friend Joe Leone, who I was with the day I met you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We quickly realized, oh my God, we both grew up watching Star Trek, and he loved Deanna Troi and I loved Beverly Crusher. And we would literally we were doing things like when the Blu-rays were coming out and they were having these theater events where you could like go to the theater and watch, like we went together to watch, episodes together at the movies, and we literally realized he grew up in Baltimore. I grew up in Cleveland. We literally had the same childhood. Mm-hmm. But then here's a quick little slide of, we did a lot of weeks during the pandemic, which was kind of getting together from all over the world, just to get on for an hour or two and chat. But Davey there from Australia, and the boys in the UK, Joe and Ewan, and James and Kelvin, like we were literally like getting on like 12 noon Pacific every Sunday for a year. And
Amy Wilson. Yeah,
Amy.
Look at you, clean shaven. I love that look on you, by the way. But I mean, that's what got us through. I feel like that's a big part of what got us through the lockdown, through pandemic, is being able to, even though, I don't think no one that I see in that photo, we're in many different time zones all across the globe, not just the country. But we all came together and were able to bond during that dark time of our lives. And again, just so lucky to have, it's a collective, not to use too many Borg terms, but it is a collection of like-minded people that have found each other. And that's beautiful, and I don't know. Couldn't say enough good things about what Star Trek means to me.
Right. Somebody said something I saw this on Facebook this morning, and it described going to a concert. It's like, there's nothing like going to a concert, because you get there and you're seeing your favorite band, and you're going to know the words to every song, and you're going to be singing along, but you're going to be able to look to your left, to your right, and the person next to you knows all of that too. And suddenly within 5 minutes, you're best friends. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yes, I love going to concerts, and I have experienced that on a million occasions. Mm-hmm. But that's also what it's like to go to STLV mm-hmm. and suddenly find yourself in line for a photo op. And so you start talking to the person behind you or in front of you. And, I have literally met people like that who I'm friends with now, because I met them in line. Mm-hmm. At STLV.
100%. That's how I met Mark, my friend Cassie, who comes to conventions. And, it's really funny because in a way, I guess that, I wouldn't have it any other way. But, I think that people that don't get it, that aren't Star Trek fans, they think it's just like, this little sci-fi show that geeks like, or whatever, nerds like. But I always, it really is funny, because I remember explaining to one of my bosses one time that I was going to Vegas. This was years ago, but But I was going to Vegas, and she said, well, what for? Oh, I love Vegas. Like, where are you staying? And I was, she was expecting somewhere on the Strip, but this was obviously when the convention was still at the Rio. And I'm like, oh, I'm staying at the Rio. What's really funny is everybody at my work knows that I'm gay. It's not like a thing at all. But it's harder. It's harder. I say this pretty regularly. It's harder to come out as a Star Trek fan than it is to come out as gay, because people get the gay thing. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Generally, at least where I live. And, but people do not understand the Star Trek thing. And so I told her, I said, well, I'm going to a Star Trek convention. I go every year. And she goes, no, you're not. And I'm like, no, I am, and she goes, no, you're not. And she just couldn't get to a place where that was normal. But I say, like, this is what I do every year. These are my people. This is my tribe. And I don't know if this is a perfect analogy, but, especially with like people who are really into like football or whatever, I'll say, if you had the chance to not just go to the Super Bowl, but like go to the Super Bowl all week, meet all the players, meet all the coaches, meet all the training people, like hang out with them, get your picture taken with them, get an autograph. But then you also got to hang out with people who liked football as much as you all week. Like, wouldn't you go? And they say yes sometimes, or they don't get it still. But yeah, I just think it's really funny because people who get it,
Yeah. But. Well, and that's funny. I've used the football analogy to throw back at people myself. Like, yes, people love to sit around and like go to football, or either go to football games or sit in their living room and buy the damn $100 jersey and all the other paraphernalia and act like that they're physically involved with this team that they're doing nothing to contribute to other than financially supporting it. But yeah, you get all dressed up, you put bumper stickers on your car, you put a flag outside your house, you spend hours and hours and hours playing fantasy football, which is not even real,
right?
But you can't comprehend Star Trek fandom. It's just another type of fandom.
It really is, and I think that's a great way to put it. I mean, it's very similar. Although I would like, maybe it's arrogant, I would like to think a little bit more profound than football. But
yes, I tell people that
man's game.
We were having my cousin visited like 2 weeks ago, and I'll talk about this because she won't ever hear this, but she's like obsessed with Hallmark movies and like even goes to the Hallmark movie convention. So I respect that because of my fandom.
Of course.
But on the other hand, I love to think that there's more meaning in Star Trek than there is in a Hallmark movie.
Yeah. What's really funny is I know a lot of people, including actors, Star Trek actors, who love Hallmark movies. So I'm not gonna bash Hallmark, but yeah, it's different, but it's same, like it would be hypocritical to judge them. But like, yeah, I think when you can actually sit down and have a conversation, like I've talked to people who didn't get it at first, but once I talked to, the societal importance and like the way that it has developed as such a huge, you talked about it last time, anti-discrimination and racism and sexism and all those things that Star Trek challenges on a weekly basis. Like when you can talk to them about those things, they start to get it and not think of it as just this like, silly little sci-fi show. But, it takes a minute to get there. For people.
Well, that was one of the things that we talked about today, too, on the other podcast, was that like The Chase is a great episode to show somebody who's never seen Star Trek. I mean, like, you can kind of get the whole gist of what the universe is like and get a good Roddenberry-esque speech at the end about, what the morals of Star Trek are and whatnot, kind of in one episode.
Yeah.
So
how much more similar we are than different. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Love it.
Shall we talk a little bit about Star Trek novels?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. We should talk about Star Trek novels because I know both of us are huge fans.
Yes, exactly. So let me just say here, Jason has a little claim to fame. And if you listen to Trexperts this week here on BQN, you may have already heard this, but your namesake has been included in a Star Trek novel.
Yes, I am. I can now die a happy, Star Trek fan life because I am a character in a Star Trek novel. It is Star Trek: The Next Generation, Available Light by Dayton Ward. Yes, Christos has his copy that he's holding up if you're watching. And good friend of mine, Dayton, who is I refer to him as a prolific author, especially prolific Star Trek author. Put me in his novel, which is very flattering and humbling. And it is literally like, I'm just like, okay, I'm pretty good. Like, I don't need much else in life. I'm in a Star Trek novel. So,
no, it's pretty cool. So I'm going to be honest. I haven't read this one only because they're a little, this is part of the timeline that has been, I don't know. I don't want to say washed away, but Coda kind of took care of that. So I'm going to try to get in there and resolve it. I was like in it to win it when these books started way back with Death in Winter, way back when, and then some of the novels that really went on to tell the story of the E and all that stuff like that. So I need to get in there and finish it. But I do know you're in it. In fact, I bought this to support you, actually, like way back. You're like, I'm going to be in this novel. I'm like, okay, I'll get me a copy. But yeah. But I'm afraid to read it. Like that, like it's like on my list in a sense that I need to figure out what I need to jump into to finish up that whole, series.
Yeah. No, it's fair. And it is, it is a standalone in that you could read it and fully get it. But there are events that lead up to this book that would make maybe a little bit more sense. But I think I'm on page 40, 43 or something like that. So I always say, just read my chapter. And what I'm really happy about is I didn't speak to Dayton at all when he was reading it. But I work for Philippa Laveau, I think it's Laveau, from Measure of a Man, who puts Data on trial, which I think is an amazing claim to fame, because who doesn't like that episode? Fantastic episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So she is now in the book. She is the Attorney General of Starfleet. So basically, the top law enforcement lawyer in Starfleet, or in the Federation. She might be the Attorney General of the Federation. And so I work for her, which is a great. I think I was just really pleased with the way the character turned out. And you're right. I always say that timeline has been obliterated, but that doesn't mean that you can't, still appreciate all the books that happen in that timeline before that happened.
No, exactly. I still, like I said, I used, in fact, if anyone has ever read Death in Winter, the cover inspired the artwork for this podcast.
Oh, I didn't know that, but yes, that makes sense. Now that I see that, I know that book.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, I don't think, but I do see her in the.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's the first in that time, in that universe, I guess. It's the first post-Nemesis novel. So what are some of your faves? Do you have any books you've read recently, or?
Yes. And I think, so speaking of the prior, like the timelines that Available Light comes in, I really liked, and I think it's because I have a really poor imagination, but I always really liked the books that were kind of offshoots of the main series, so like Star Trek New Frontier, Star Trek Titan, the Star Trek Corps of Engineers, because there's enough characters that you're familiar with. I don't know why, I just really like, I know this character, and you read about new characters. I mean, they obviously introduce new characters, but I just love the especially the Titan books where Riker and Troy and I think Tuvok. Well, I know Tuvok's, in those. Hawk's, Lieutenant Hawk from First Contact's partner, who's a tactical officer, is in the Titan books. So, obviously Hawk died in First Contact. But anyway, I love all of those. I was trying to think, probably my favorite I think a recent Star Trek Picard book that I read, I don't know if you read Rogue Elements, the Chris.
It's the best.
Oh my God, so good! Like
It's like
I didn't know where they were gonna go, and then for the further I went, the longer I wanted it to last. Like it was just so good.
yeah, and the way it was bringing in like tying things from Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country to, you know, what's the guy from The Most Toys? I always forget the character's name.
Kivas Fajo.
Yeah, I mean he's in it. It's like I felt like that is like Rios meets Indiana Jones meets Han Solo. I mean that book was just. I mean it had like I almost said the Iconians. The what's the ones from the TOS mobster world?
So that's probably my favorite character, and interestingly, we've never seen her before. I think it was Ionians, actually.
Yeah, Ionians. Yeah,
but she was, what was her name? The Ledger was her name in that book. Oh my God.
I loved her in that book.
What an amazing character. Like for an original character that I didn't know before, I loved her character.
Yeah,
I thought she was.
I did that as an audiobook, but I just really enjoyed that book. And you know, we can briefly mention this because but the follow-up book to that, you know, that was the third Picard novel. The fourth one, I'm about 80% through right now, and I'm just like, it's not that I'm taking my time with this on purpose, but I kind of am, because I like am savoring every moment. Like I never thought when I opened the cover of this book that I was going to get so much of Garrick's backstory. Like it was the last thing I saw coming.
I was also in the middle of this book. I'd say I'm probably like 50 or 60% done. I'm listening to it, but not reading it. But love it. I think Raffi, Michelle Hurd, first of all, who I met, and she was at the local Star Trek convention that we had in March. I took a couple of my friends. We met on Saturday, and by Sunday we were so bonded that like she gave me a huge hug, and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, like it's been so great meeting you." And after we were walking away, my friends were like, "Oh, you've met her like before, like months before." And I was like, "No, I met her yesterday. She's just amazing." And I just cannot say enough good things about Michelle Hurd. But yeah, I love that book. I think Raffi is a fascinating character, and I especially love being able to see, and this isn't a giveaway, I don't think, just see how before things went wrong, you know, when she was in Starfleet Intelligence and when she was, you know, and I also love Evan Evagoria's character. Why can't I think? Eleanor. I love Eleanor. I think he's fantastic. What a great book. I'm really enjoying it as well.
Yeah, me too. I'm like I said, it's almost like I don't want it to end kind of a thing, but I'm really hoping too, like I love these Picard novels. There's not one that I didn't like. I like the one on the Titan that was more focused about Troy and Riker. I like the Last Hope, or Last Best Hope, whatever. The one that it was the prequel novel.
Yep.
And that really, for me, just really helped set the tone with, you know, it really helped me understand Picard when it started. And I think it might be why I enjoy season 1 of Picard more than the average. I mean, arguably, you shouldn't need a novel to enjoy something, but the backstory really helps.
Doesn't hurt. I do want to say, before we get off the novels, there were 2 novels that I really wanted, and I know you guys were speaking about like narration in audiobooks. But I read Imzadi, Star Trek: The Next Generation, Imzadi, years and years, decades ago at this point. And that is probably my favorite Star Trek novel of all time. But also Reunion. Have you ever listened to the audiobook of Star Trek: The Next Generation Reunion?
No, and I think it's on the shelf behind me, the book, but
you should get the audiobook because Gates McFadden does the narration.
Well, so I may have listened to it I might have listened to it on audio cassette.
Yeah.
When I was in high school. I can tell you this, I don't remember it.
Right. So it'll be like a new adventure for you. But I'm telling you, it's on the Enterprise D, but Picard's old crew is coming from the Stargazer. You know, when he was captain of the Stargazer, they're coming back to like do this. It's a special occasion, but I won't go into too much depth. But it is so good. Like, yes, it is so good. Like, I mean, I didn't see it coming, and Gates McFadden does the narration, and so like love it. Just wanted to shout out those 2 books for people that are looking for Star Trek books.
I think the thing that has helped maybe not go down some of these older books on audio is that they're all adapted. Like, you know, I just listened to Vulcan's Forge and it was like adapted. I'm like,
yeah, I don't love
want
that.
Adapted.
No, you don't. And it's funny. I'm glad you feel the same way. I don't like it, but I would say she just does such a great job that, you know, it's better than nothing. But I would read the book because it is a great book.
We were just talking up World of Worlds a couple of weeks ago. What a great audio drama that is. I mean, that's Gates McFadden and Leonard Nimoy and, you know, a bunch of others. But like just, yeah, you can just like listen to them read you the phone book and you'd be okay with it. But when you have a good story and the acting, the voice acting that goes in with that, I think, you know, I you know, like even, you know, Gates did her Prodigy episode. I felt like she did a really good job with that, you know, just doing the voice acting. So, yeah, novels. Okay. Well, my last topic for readers this week is just going to be more like, hey, I know I talked about the new Star Trek Prodigy video game, but I finally had a chance since I had some travels. I bought this for Nintendo Switch, and I ended up playing it most of the day last Sunday, and then I played it for a 4-hour plane ride to Charlotte this week. It's a great game, and I don't know if it's because I think it's made for kids, and so from a video game standpoint, that's my speed.
It's not hard, right.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I still feel like there were some things I was struggling to figure out, but I mean, I feel like I know what I'm doing at least, which is great. I'm not. You know, I play Star Trek Online, or I used to, I should say. But I'm trying to get back into things before Star Trek Resurgence comes out. Is that what we call it? Resurgence? In fact, probably talking about on next week's episode is the Resurgence comic book has started, which is going to introduce the video game. And Leah Brahms, all I know is Leah Brahms is on the cover of this comic book. So cool. I think she's going to be a big part of the story of that. So, but yeah, if you get a chance, I know this is available for PC. It's available on PlayStation 4 and 5, Nintendo Switch. I think it's on Xbox as well. So wherever your platform of choice is.
I do have a Switch, so I should download this. I haven't. I know Davey from Trexperts has played it as well. So
it's fun, and it's only making me like it. It's actually giving some story to Prodigy. It's set after the first 5 episodes of the first 10 episodes of Prodigy. So so it's giving a little backstory, and it's good timing. Prodigy's on right now. We just had finished episode 5 of season 1.5 or episode 15, whatever you want to call it. So we're like right in the middle of the current season. So playing the video game seems pretty appropriate right now. So it's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's my little tidbit of the week. So Jason, I'm going to ask you my final question for you before we wrap things up.
Yes.
If you could create the next Trek series, what would it be?
Gosh, this is on the spot. I didn't know this was coming.
I know. Well,
that is a great question, because I think we live in I've been calling it the Star Trek Renaissance right now, where, you know, there's so many Star Treks currently in production. It's like a cornucopia of Star Trek that's happening. And like I said, I have a really terrible imagination. I'd probably just, there was talk, and I don't know if it's been scrapped, or I don't know if people are still available. There was talk of a Section 31 series. I'm not with Michelle Yeoh, and I'm not sure if that's still happening. That was fascinating to me. I've never been a huge fan of Section 31, but I think Discovery did it, different. And so Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I love all things Star Trek. There's been nothing, I can honestly say there's been nothing that Star Trek's done that I'm like, oh, I hate that. I know that makes me a rare Star Trek fan maybe, but I just love it all. And so it's hard for me to think of something that like they haven't done that I want to see. But I do like the idea. I'm really, really excited about Picard season 3, just because I love the idea of, that's probably what I would have picked, right? I would have picked,
Right.
Let's find out where the next generation's cast or characters are now, because I think that's so fascinating. But I think we're about to see, right? When does that start?
February 17th or 16th,
Yes.
something like that.
So soon, just a couple of months away. But
Yeah.
so I don't know if I can punt, but I'm excited to see what happens. That's what I would have picked, I can honestly tell you. I want to find out what the next year.
Yeah, I feel like what we're getting for, when this whole idea of Picard started way back when,
Which I was there.
20. Yep.
You were too, weren't you?
We were there.
Yeah, we were there when, well, and I remember hearing, like, you got to be in the main events room. You got to get to the main events room. There's a really special announcement being made.
You might have been one of the people I was texting. We were there. We knew it was coming.
Yeah,
I expect. When it said Alex Kurtzman was going to make an unannounced presentation, it got big fast. But yeah, you had to get there. But yeah, what we're getting for season 3 is like my dream come true. I think. I mean, ask me after we've seen it, and maybe we'll tell you if it is. But I have very high hopes coming in. I feel like I have all the faith in Terry Metellus, and I've said this before. I don't know if he's like, man, he loves to edge you over there on Twitter. He even just dropped for Thanksgiving Day like 10 seconds of the orchestration going on, and they're recording for season 3, and it's literally the First Contact theme, and I'm like, I gotta get back to the First Contact theme. You're just getting all the feels. So it's just like, so yeah, to your point, that's what I've always wanted, and I guess I'm getting it. So my hope. So I'm just kind of hoping that for me personally, and I've said this on here before, that we just see whatever the timeline that is with Picard 2401, whatever, when that show ends, the next show just kind of picks up and keeps going in the Federation in that time. I just want to see that continuation of things. So whether it's Seven and Rafi, which is a lot of speculation there, whether it's Kate Mulgrew coming back as Janeway for her own show or a supporting role, I just hope we just continue with the Federation politics in 2401.
Love it.
With seeing Starfleet. I mean, I guess I should say a little bit more there. I want to see a Starfleet vessel. I want to see missions. Maybe a show that's a little bit more structured, like Strange New Worlds, but set there. I don't know. We'll see. But that's my wish. But I guess I'm getting my biggest wish, so I can't be. I guess after that mountain is climbed, I'll just have to move on to the next. Let's see here. Thank you very much for coming this week. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a real joy.
Yeah. Oh, it's been great. Next week, we'll be back with Alexander Rodriguez, who some of you may know. We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Connective, to continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts at What's the TBEV. We would love for you to reach out. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcasts. Don't forget all our other great shows on BQN Podcasts like Galaxy Class, All Good Things, Union Federation, Infinite Diversity, Mickey's Marvels, History with the Zilagis, and our newest show, Trexperts Quiz, where you can also find Jason on this week's current episode as the scorekeeper.
Scorekeeper extraordinary.
Scorekeeper, yes. So, Jason, where can people find you?
Well, a lot of people don't know that Christos and I are the admins of the Federation group on Facebook. So we would love to. It is a primarily GLBTQ and allies Facebook group, which I am happy to be a part of. And I'm on Instagram at Anderson5280, and while Twitter is still a thing, I'm there at JAA5280. So,
yes. And listeners, you can find me on both Instagram and Twitter at GreekGeekSD. And I'm gonna put that out there. Please kind of gravitate toward the Instagram. I really do feel like Twitter is spiraling till its death, and one day it'll just be gone. So we need to be connected elsewhere before that happens. So make sure you're following in both locations, or if you get stuck, hit the BQN Collective on Facebook. Please hit like and the subscribe button here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show. At this time, we'd like to thank our associate producer, Mr. Davey Willett, host of Treksperts. If you would like to help us keep our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Join the Hive to enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings of the Hive Mind on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages. Once again, Jason, thank you so much for coming on. I loved having you.
Thank
you. Great guest. And like I said, my oldest STLV buddy.
Aww. Oldest and forever.
Listeners, once again, thank you for listening, and we'll hope you'll join us next time for more tea on What's the Tea Bag.